Joining us on the line right now is U.S. Senator David Vitter, Republican from Louisiana. Good morning to you, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Larry and Brian. Great to be with you.
Well, you sit on a committee that's going to have to make a decision about the next Attorney General of the United States.
Yeah.
Confirmation hearings have been underway for Loretta Lynch, the woman that the president believes should replace Eric Holder.
Right.
So here's my question. Do you think she's qualified, and will you vote for her?
I think she's a smart person who's generally qualified in the law. I strongly disagree with her defense of President Obama's illegal executive action granting amnesty to about 5 million illegal aliens. And I thought her response and defense of that in committee yesterday was full of holes and really came up way short.
Well, here's a little
based on that issue, I'm voting against her.
So you will vote against her?
Correct.
All right, and let me play a little clip from yesterday. This is part of what Senator Sessions had got at with Loretta Lynch. It has to do with illegal immigrants in this country and whether or not they have the right to work.
Let me ask you this. In the workplace of America today, when we have a high number of unemployed, we've had declining wages for many years, we have the lowest percentage of Americans working, who has more right to a job in this country? A lawful immigrant who's here, a green card holder, or a citizen, or a person who entered the country unlawfully?
Listen.
Well, Senator, I believe that the right and the obligation to work is one that's shared by everyone in this country, regardless of how they came here. And certainly if someone is here, regardless of status, I would prefer that they be participating in the workplace than not participating in the workplace.
The right to work is one that's shared by everyone in this country, regardless of how they came here. Do you agree or disagree with that?
No, that's outrageous, Larry and Brian, and I hope everybody out there listening has heard that and agrees it's outrageous. She's saying if somebody is here illegally, they have the same right to a job. They shouldn't be any further back in line. They have the same right to a job as a citizen or an immigrant here legally. That is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, we think it's crazy. You think it's crazy. Most of our listeners, when we talked about this at 6 a.m., thought it was crazy. So here's my question. Are there any of your Republican colleagues in this new Republican majority-led Senate who doesn't think that's crazy? I mean, how can your colleagues vote for it? Have you talked to any of your colleagues? Are there others who are coming out?
Well, I'm beginning to talk to them about that response in particular because it was so crazy and so outrageous. And anybody who's considering voting for her, I mean, that has to be a question. How do you defend that sort of statement? How do you promote that sort of person to be the top law enforcement officer in the country who will be directly involved in these issues?
Senator Vitter, you would like to be the next governor of Louisiana, and yeah. I wonder if you as you picture yourself in that role, being the chief executive of that state, you're going to have to deal with the very real-world consequences of this president's immigration policies.
Absolutely.
When someone like Loretta Lynch becomes the top law enforcement agent in the country, and this is her lax attitude about enforcing our federal laws, how does that affect you at the state level?
Well, it's very worrisome, and I talk to immigration enforcement officers and local law enforcement, state police, all the time. Their morale is at an all-time low because of leadership from Washington or lack of leadership. Basically, the only instructions they're getting out of Washington is don't enforce that law, don't arrest this person, don't do anything about this. And that's not what they signed up for, and that's not what they consider their duty.
All right, so I've been watching this story very carefully, and I've been listening very carefully to the testimony of Loretta Lynch. And look, I mean, she is a smart woman. She can put together a sentence more beautifully than most people I know. She seems to be very sharp. But when she says that those who are in this country illegally have the same right to work as those who were born in this country, American citizens, or those who came to this country illegally, I think that's a fundamental problem. And yet, I hear the conventional wisdom is that she's going to be confirmed. Do you detect that is changing?
I'm not sure yet. I think today is going to tell a lot because this word about this response is just getting out, quite frankly. It's just getting out. It's just being heard for the first time by a lot of people, including a lot of members of the Senate. So I'm going to be very interested about folks' reaction to it.
Well, I mean, to the members of the committee that you've talked to, I mean, John Cornyn, for example, from the state of Texas, where immigration is a very important issue. Do you see him potentially voting against Loretta Lynch?
I honestly don't know. I haven't talked to him directly about it, certainly not about that response. Again, I've been encouraging for weeks all of my Republican colleagues, all of my colleagues, but starting on the Republican side, to oppose this nomination because of the flat-out illegal and unconstitutional executive amnesty, which she is basically being a shrill for. So I've been pushing that for weeks, and there will be several people, many people, a significant number, who feel that way and vote that way. Whether it would be most or all Republicans, that's yet to be seen.
Senator David Vitter is our guest, Republican from Louisiana and a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And, Senator, there's another vote pending in the Senate that also is going to affect the Bayou State in a big way. Of course, that's the Keystone Pipeline.
Right.
Sure.
It looks, of course, it's going to pass the House and the Senate. The president has vowed to veto it. I wonder, are you already working on trying to line up enough senators to override that veto, and how is it looking?
We are. That's uphill, but we are. We're hoping to get at least on the order of 62, 63 votes in the Senate on the bill. To pass it, including something called cloture, we need 60 votes. So we're going to do that. But to have a veto-proof majority, we need 67. So we're trying to round up more. We're trying to look at any amendments that could attract more Democratic votes. But that's uphill, quite frankly, right now. So getting from 62, 63 to 67 is uphill.
One amendment that was floated out there, and I don't know the status of it, had to do with the materials and the labor needing to be domestic, only United States materials, steel used and such. Do you have a position on that?
Generally, I favor made in America sort of provisions like that. I don't know the exact details of that amendment. I don't think it's come up yet. I could be wrong. But we're looking at anything like that if it would attract additional Democratic votes.
All right, just one more question about the confirmation process. If the Judiciary Committee, which is dominated by Republicans, since Republicans are in the majority, if they vote against the nomination of Loretta Lynch, could it still come to the floor for a vote?
Yes, and I think the bottom line is one way or the other, it's going to come to the floor. A major nomination like this virtually always does. It's pretty unheard of to be stopped in committee. And I don't have a problem with that, but I do have a problem with just putting a rubber stamp and saying fine to a nominee who, number one, is a shrill for a flat-out illegal, unconstitutional executive amnesty. That's a big, big problem, constitutional problem. And number two, gave the sort of response that you just played regarding illegals having exactly the same right to work and to a job and to make a living here as citizens.
So you're against it. You won't vote. You will vote no. Jeff Sessions says he will vote no. What about Mike Lee and others? How many no votes do you think you might have?
Well, we don't have any sort of exact count, but my guess is on the floor we'll easily get to 25, but obviously we need to go way above that to have an impact and possibly block the nomination.
All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for your guidance on this, and thanks for joining us here this morning. Senator David Vitter from Louisiana.
Enjoyed the visit. Appreciate it.